The Candyman, the man who killed Halloween. Ronald Clark O'Brien was an American man convicted of killing his 8-year-old son, Timothy, on Halloween 1974. Timothy's death was caused by a potassium cyanide-laced pixie stick. The stick was supposedly collected during a trick-or-treat outing that night. O'Brien poisoned his son to claim life insurance money and ease his own financial troubles. O'Brien also distributed poisoned candy to his daughter and 3 other children in an attempt to cover up his crime. However, neither his daughter nor the other children ate the poisoned candy. He was convicted of capital murder June 1975 and sentenced to death. He was executed by lethal injection in March 1984. O'Brien and his wife, Dayneen, lived in Deer Park, Texas, with their children Timothy and Elizabeth. O'Brien worked as an optician at Texas State Optical in Sharpstown, Houston. He was an adamant member of the Second Baptist Church. He would sing in the choir and ran a local bus program. On October 31st, 1974, O'Brien took his 2 children trick-or-treating in a Pasadena, Texas neighborhood. O'Brien's neighbor and his 2 children accompanied them. After visiting a home where the occupant failed to answer the door, the children grew impatient and ran ahead to the next home while O'Brien stayed behind. He eventually caught up with the group and produced 5 21-inch pixie sticks, which O'Brien would later claim were given to him by the occupant of the house that had not answered the door. At the end of the evening, O'Brien gave the neighbors 2 children each a pixie stick, as well as 1 to Elizabeth and 1 to Timothy. Upon returning home, O'Brien gave the 5th pixie stick to a 10-year-old boy whom he'd recognized from his church. Before bed, Timothy asked to eat some of the candy he'd collected. Then, according to Ronald, he chose the pixie stick. Timothy had trouble getting the powdered candy out of the straw, so O'Brien helped him loosen the powder. After tasting the candy, Timothy complained that it tasted bitter. O'Brien then gave his son Kool-Aid to wash away the taste. Timothy immediately began to complain that his stomach hurt and ran to the bathroom where he began vomiting and convulsing. O'Brien later claimed he held Timothy while he was vomiting and the child went limp in his arms. Timothy O'Brien died on the route to the hospital, less than an hour after consuming the candy. Timothy's death from poisoned Halloween candy raised fear in the community. Numerous parents in Deer Park and the surrounding area turned in the candy that their children got from trick-or-treating to the police, fearing it was laced with poison. The police did not initially suspect Brian of any foul play, until Timothy's autopsy revealed that the pixie stick he had consumed was laced with a fatal dose of potassium cyanide. 4 of the 5 pixie sticks O'Brien claimed to have received were recovered by authorities from the other children, none of whom had consumed the candy. The parents of the 5th child became hysterical when they could not locate the candy after being notified by the police. The parents rushed upstairs to find their son asleep, holding the unconsumed candy. The boy had been unable to open the staples that sealed the wrapper shut. All 5 of the pixie sticks had been opened, with the top 2 inches refilled with cyanide powder and then resealed with a staple. According to the pathologist who tested the pixie sticks, the candy consumed by Timothy contained enough cyanide to kill 2 adults, while the other 4 candies contained enough to kill 3 or 4 adults. O'Brien initially told police that he could not remember which house he got the pixie sticks from. Police became suspicious because O'Brien and his neighbor had only taken their children trick-or-treating on 2 streets because it had been raining. Their suspicion increased after learning that none of the homes they visited had given out pixie sticks. After walking the neighborhood with police 3 times, O'Brien led them to the house where no one answered the door. O'Brien claimed that he went back there before catching up with the group. He said the owner of the home did not turn the lights on, but did crack the door open and handed him 5 pixie sticks. O'Brien claimed to have only seen the man's arm, which he described as hairy. The home was owned by a man named Courtney Melvin. Melvin was an air traffic controller at William P. Hobby Airport and did not get home from work until 11 p.m. on Halloween night. Police ruled Melvin out as a suspect when over 200 people confirmed that he had been at work. As their investigation progressed, police learned that Ronald O'Brien was over $100,000 in debt and had a history of being unable to hold a job. Over the 10 years leading up to Timothy's murder, O'Brien had worked 21 different jobs. At the time of his arrest, he was suspected of stealing from his current employer, Texas State Optical, and was close to being fired there. O'Brien's car had been repossessed. He had defaulted on several bank loans, and the family home had been foreclosed. Police discovered that O'Brien had taken out life insurance policies on his children in the months preceding Timothy's death. In January 1974, he had taken out $10,000 life insurance policies on both of his children. 1 month before Timothy's murder, O'Brien took out additional $20,000 policies on both children, despite the objections of his life insurance agency. O'Brien's wife maintained that she did not know about the insurance policies on her children's lives. Police learned that on the morning after Timothy's death, O'Brien had called the insurance company to inquire about collecting the policies he had taken out on his son. A worker came forward informing police O'Brien had visited the chemical supply store in Houston to buy cyanide shortly before Halloween 1974. O'Brien left without purchasing anything after learning that the smallest amount available to purchase was 5 pounds. Police began to suspect that Ronald O'Brien had laced the candies with poison in an effort to kill his children and collect on their life insurance policies. They believed he gave the other children poisoned candy in an effort to cover up his crime. Police repeatedly questioned O'Brien, but he maintained his innocence. Although police never discovered where or when O'Brien bought the poison, he was arrested for Timothy's murder on November 5th, 1974. He was indicted on 1 count of capital murder and 4 counts of attempted murder. O'Brien entered a plea of not guilty in all 5 counts. O'Brien's trial began in Houston on May 5th, 1975. During the trial, a chemist who was acquainted with O'Brien testified that in summer 1973, O'Brien contacted him asking about how much cyanide would be fatal. The chemical supply salesman also testified that Bryan had asked him how to purchase cyanide. Friends and co-workers testified that in the months before Timothy's death, O'Brien showed an unusual interest in cyanide and spoke about how much it would take to kill a person. O'Brien's sister-in-law and brother-in-law testified that on the day of Timothy's funeral, he spoke of using the money from Timothy's insurance policy to take a long vacation and buy other items. During the trial, his wife rejected the claim that Timothy chose the pixie stick, stating that O'Brien had in fact forced him to choose the stick. O'Brien continued to maintain his innocence. His defense mainly drew upon the decades-old urban legend concerning a mad poisoner who hands out Halloween candy laced with poison or needles or candy apples with razor blades inside. These stories have persisted despite the fact that there are no documented instances of strangers poisoning Halloween candy. The case and subsequent trial gathered national attention. The press dubbed O'Brien the Candyman. On June 3, 1975, it took a jury only 46 minutes to find Bryan guilty of capital murder and 4 counts of attempted murder. It took the jury 71 minutes to sentence him to death by electrocution. Shortly after he was convicted, his wife filed for divorce. She later remarried, and her new husband adopted her daughter, Elizabeth. At the time, men sentenced to death under Texas law were confined to the LSI unit near Huntsville, Texas. According to a former chaplain who worked for the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, O'Brien was shunned and despised by his fellow death row inmates for killing his child and was absolutely friendless. The inmates reportedly petitioned to hold an organized demonstration on O'Brien's execution date to express their hatred of him. O'Brien's first execution date was set for August 8, 1980. His attorney successfully petitioned for a stay of execution. A second date was scheduled for May 25, 1982. That date was also postponed. The judge that scheduled the third execution date for October 31, 1982, the 8th anniversary of the crime, the judge offered to personally drive O'Brien to the death chamber. This was to be the first time Texas executed an inmate by lethal injection. The Supreme Court delayed the date yet again to give O'Brien a chance to pursue an appeal to seek a new trial. A fourth date was scheduled for March 31st, 1984. O'Brien's lawyer sought a fourth stay on the basis that lethal injection was a cruel and unusual punishment. On March 28th, a federal judge rejected the request. On March 31st, 1984, shortly after midnight, O'Brien was executed by lethal injection at the Huntsville unit. His last meal consisted of a medium-well T-bone steak, French fries and ketchup, whole kernel corn, sweet peas, lettuce and tomato salad with egg and French dressing, iced tea, sweetener, saltines, Boston cream pie, and rolls. O'Brien's last words were, "What is about to transpire in a few moments is wrong. However, we as human beings do make mistakes and errors. This execution is one of those wrongs, yet doesn't mean our whole system of justice is wrong. Therefore, I would forgive all who have taken part in any way in my death. Also, to anyone I have offended in any way during my 39 years, I pray and ask for your forgiveness, just as I forgive anyone who offended me in any way. And I pray and ask God's forgiveness for all of us, respectively, as human beings. To my loved ones, I extend my undying love. To those close to me, know in your heart I love you, one and all. God bless you all, and may God's best blessings be always yours. Ronald C. O'Brien. P.S. During my time here, I have been treated well by all TDC personnel. During the execution, a crowd of 300 demonstrators gathered outside the prison, cheering while some yelled "trick or treat." Others showered anti-death penalty demonstrators with candy. That's all for this case. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you do have any more true crime stories you want me to cover, leave them in the comments below.